Fortunately for you, we're on camera, so we got to make sure everybody sees your pretty face.
Get your bald guy quota up. The bald listeners out there.
Greg was
represented.
Greg was just helping us with the context required to watch practice and actually try to, discern something from our vantage point, Nick, as opposed to what you guys are trying to accomplish on a day-by-day basis.
For sure. We put the offense a lot of times in some tough situations. Like the other day, we had a bunch of third and longs, and, those are completed or converted like 20%, in the conversion rate in the league. So we were sitting there, and, all of a sudden, he gets frustrated because he wants to have success and things like that, and you kind of can feel it, and the fans are out here. They want to see some conversions, and, it's 3rd and 11. We put him in a bunch of those and kind of teaching him to sometimes you just got to check it down, put the ball in play, and then that ball gets completed, and now you got a chance to, if it doesn't get the first down, still go and get more yards and maybe go 4th and 1 or 4th and 2. So those are all learning situations for him, and we've really made it tough on them from a lot of – our defense has a lot of fronts and coverages in, and we're really not in the league it's kind of called script pimping. You go look and see, okay, they're going to play Tampa 2 here. Is
that official terminology?
I think it's an official term. And so, you don't go over there and kind of do any give yourself a little competitive advantage. So he's really kind of seeing a lot of things for the first time. So it's been good. There's certainly, the turnovers, we'd love to not have those, but those aren't all on him either, so.
Yeah, so there's there's a lot of context here. I mean, and obviously
I know, but this, Greg, you got to talk to me like I'm 5. Like,
right,
that's how this works.
Well, because Nick and I obviously been talking, so, you want to put quarterbacks in tough situations now because the last thing you want to do is have the quarterback face tough situations when it's week 3, and he hasn't seen a whole lot. And plus, and you can speak to this better than I can, not only does Denard Wilson do a lot of stuff, but you're going to go to Tampa where Todd Bowles is going to show him an awful lot because he's got very multiple pressure schemes.
The thing we talked about is we kind of, as Brian and Mike set up the preseason schedule, we've got Denard Wilson, which is the Baltimore-themed defense, which is kind of the most popular in the league right now. Then we go to Tampa, which probably has one of the 2 or 3 most complex blitz packages. Then we go to Atlanta, and you'll get the jet front, kind of the Gus Bradley, old Seattle defense front. And then we come back here and play Minnesota. So before we play Denver,
with Brian Flores.
I know, with that ridiculous blitz package where there's more people.
He's an insane person.
Yeah. It looks like there's 13 people on the field. You're like, wait a minute. They can't have all these guys here and a guy in the post? How's that work?
Right.
So, we're going to be we feel like the preseason will set us up with exposing not just Cam, all the players of the offense to all these different looks. And, I think sometimes when you go up against maybe a simpler defense, you can kind of find your plays that are, bread and hey, we need a good one here. We know they're going to play an overfront. They're going to be in too high, and we can run kind of one of those plays. So that's where, for us, we look at the preseason as we're going to get a lot of answers out of what we want.
Titans fans obviously hyper-fixated on Cam and his day-by-day progress, but obviously we're out here for 2 days of padded practice. We get a better look at the offensive line in particular. What can you tell the audience about what you've seen from not just the starting unit, but the depth?
Yeah, it's obviously more depth than we had last year. You look at that 2 group, especially, those guys are really, John Njoku's taking a big step in the 2, and then Oli Udoh and then Jalen Duncan have really kind of been rotating at that left tackle spot. So that really gives you 5 tackles that can play, which, last year we were kind of searching for options there. And, everybody remembers we had kind of the weekly rotation of who was playing tackle. So
sometimes in game.
Yeah, exactly. So we feel better about the depth of the group and kind of where they're coming. And then, Corey's done a nice job stepping in for Lloyd at the center spot and having, Zeitler and Pete in there. You got 3 really stout guys with JC, Pete, and Zeitler. And then now you got Corey in there, and then you got Dan, who's really kind of taken to the techniques that Bill teaches, and kind of changed his hand usage and the way he sets and some of those kind of things. So now all of a sudden you've seen Dan play a different style than he showed on the tape in Pittsburgh. And now you feel really good about those guys. And then, Slater's probably the guy that is probably on the move up right now.
Okay.
He's done a nice job kind of from the spring. It was a lot more schemes than they had at Sac State. And then he came back this summer, and you kind of saw a different calmness about him. So that's been good. So that's where, kind of the whole group's at.
Titans offensive coordinator Nick Holz here with us on 104.5 The Zone, as is Greg Cosell of NFL Films. Me and Lucas are just passengers in this.
And, obviously, I certainly don't know as much about our line play as Bill Callahan, but I was making it a point yesterday, in particular in the one-on-one pass pro drills, to watch Latham. and you could just see how much more comfortable he is on the right side. Just with his kick slide, his hand usage, the way he recovers, it's just more natural to him. Because in those one-on-one pass pro drills, and again, it's training camp and all that, but I mean, I don't think he got beat one time. I mean, he just looked, and he didn't even get moved. He didn't get pushed back at all.
Yeah.
He just looked so comfortable.
And he's just in such good physical condition.
Oh my God.
With the amount of weight he's lost, and he looks like a whole different person. So that's for us. You look at him, and he can now sustain throughout the practice. Which kind of last year he was so big, and he'll be the first one to tell you. And now all of a sudden, the energy's better, the explosiveness is better for him. So it's been awesome. His work is being rewarded.
How much are you and Coach Callahan working with Cam to game plan, for lack of a better word, against Coach Wilson and his defense versus working directly with Denard to try and show Cam some situations to see how he reacts?
A little bit of both. So right now, we'll be done with the installation on Saturday. So really the whole giant playbook will be in on Saturday. By Saturday afternoon, kind of we'll be done putting in new schemes, things like that. We'll have some wrinkles of formations and things like that. So it's really been Denard's getting their stuff in, we're getting our stuff in, and kind of the stuff that fits. If we have a bunch of toss crack plays, he's not putting all these outside blitzes in and things like that. So that's really been the extent of the workout, which has really been good for our offense and for our defense. They just got to look at formations and personnel groups and kind of decipher it on the fly, which is really kind of what the fourth quarter of NFL games ends up being like. So it's been like that for us, where you got to almost see the adjustments, and then really starting next week, you'll see it all kind of start to calm down and be a little more focused, I would say.
Wide receiver deployment is obviously something that you guys have been working through to see how much, in particular, Chimere Dike and Alec Iamander can handle. How well have they taken to that? And I know Brian was talking to us about excited to see them getting pads, see them work off press a little more and stuff like that.
For sure. Alec is such a big, strong guy. He did he was probably one of the more excited guys to get in pads. He loves all these toss cracks and hitting DNs, and he's a quiet guy, but he was very excited for that. So he ended up making some really nice blocks and some really, he took out a couple DNs one time and he cracked on a linebacker, and it was like, you're got to be a little bit of a weirdo to be a wideout and do that and be like, that's your thing. So that was good.
We asked him, he did the show last week. We asked him what his favorite play from college was. He said run blocking on a 2-point play because he pancaked two different guys.
Of all the one-handed catches and mossing Travis Hunter.
Yeah, exactly. I didn't see that on his highlight tape on the when he got drafted, but those are his favorite things. And so, he's got a great feel for some of those things. And then Chim really kind of has showed up, really especially on third downs. Really has been able to win through press coverage, which has been nice. He had that big one the other day where they ended up pressing him. He ended up throwing the guy by at the top of the route and working back to the ball, and then he ended up having to catch and run out the back door. And it's like, that's not a play a lot of rookies make. So that was really nice. And so we feel really good about those guys. We're excited about the two young guys to go along with everybody else.
Titans offensive coordinator Nick Holz here with us on the Zone. We'll get a couple more questions, and then he's got to get to meetings here in a second.
No, I mean, I think those two wideouts, I really like their tape coming out. Obviously I don't interview them, but the thing that really struck me about DK was, you could play him in the slot, you could play him outside. He was a motion guy a lot in college at Florida. So, and I think for coaches, like Nick, you want guys that essentially can play all the positions. You don't want to get stuck with, hey, this guy can only play here.
Exactly.
Because the NFL's not like that anymore. It might have been, 20 years ago, but it's not like that anymore.
No, there's really not that many true slot guys anymore that just play in the slot,
right.
And just are kind of the small guys. That kind of getting phased out, just because everybody's in the condensed splits because you got to dig out the safeties and cut off DNs and things like that to get the running game going, and then everything kind of works off of that. So that's where the versatility of those two, and then especially with Van and then Calvin and then Lockett, they can all kind of do those different things inside, which really help kind of hide all your tendencies, and then when you're in tight splits, you can get free access. Normally, you're not getting press, so then those guys get free releases on the routes.
As you guys get ready to head into meeting rooms and break down what you saw today, how much value do you place in the mistakes from Cam in a tip ball, an interception, a misread of something? How valuable are those for you as teaching moments?
They're all valuable. I think you learn by doing, especially playing quarterback. I don't think there's any shortcut to sitting there watching the tape and all of a sudden you've got it. You have to go out there and feel it. You have to go out there and experience it live with the speed of the game and the speed of the play clock and all those kind of things. So I don't think there's any substitute for that. So, the mistakes, the decision-making ones are probably like the highest level ones, right? When you force a ball or when you're not understanding situational football, those are where like the biggest teaching moments are. Okay, it's 2nd and 2, and you got a wide open check down, but you end up taking an extra hitch, launching it down the middle of the field. Well, we don't want that. We want the ball in the flat. Let's keep the chance. That's how you kind of survive through 18 weeks of the season. So those are big. And then really just learning structures of defense for him. So protection-wise, helping him know where he's hot. He knows those things, and just now we're getting all these different looks from our defense. How does he put it in a bucket? Okay, I'm hot on this side. I know I need to have these kind of routes or this kind of answer. And those are really the big things we spend a lot of time in meetings on.
All right, Coach Holz has to get to a meeting. We're going to quit wasting his time. Well,
No,
Greg
that's
has
great.
one. Lucas and I have.
You guys can keep Greg.
No, Greg has been saddled with us for basically 5 years. So anything he can do to get a break.
So this feels saddled with each other here. Sure.
We
Thanks,
appreciate
guys.
it, buddy.
I appreciate
Thanks
it.
for doing
All
it.
right,
What
Greg,
time?
see you
What time, Coach, is my meeting?
Coach.
12:20. You're in front of the team. You're giving the
I
team
was about to
meeting for
say,
the
he's been
afternoon.
decked out like a coach all week. Are you
Is he at
kidding me?
1099 at this point?
I was about to say, he's going to have to file it on his taxes.